Welcome to Writer's Workshop. It's Mrs. Grimmer. I am going to be walking you through the next steps of the writing process. We are working on this big young author project, and we have been brainstorming, coming up with ideas for our stories. We used a plan. We did that scoop form and came up with the parts for our story. And then we moved on to drafting. And now we're getting ready to do our steps 4 and steps 5, revise and edit, getting closer and closer to that last step of publishing and making our own books. You've done a great job of brainstorming. You did a great job of making a scoop plan. And then you have been drafting. That little blue icon is the Google Doc icon. It is where we find our writing so that we can draft. Drafting usually takes a couple of days because writers return to their work over and over again, reading, rereading, seeing, does that make sense? Did I leave anything out? That's why we look at that scoop form to make sure that we've got our setting, characters, oh no problem, order of events, and a solution to that problem. So if you are done with this drafting process, you're going to be moving on to steps 4 and 5. If you are not done with your drafting, Mrs. Grimmer's going to give you some support, or Mrs. Burnside will give you support, or Mrs. Snyder will give you support, or Mrs. McIntyre. So if you are not done drafting, you will get some support from a teacher so that you can move on to steps 4 and 5. Step 4 and 5 is called revise and editing. Maybe you're wondering, why is there a sign there that says hot and a chair? Well, I like to think of revising as being in the hot seat. We're going to talk about that in just a minute. This is the writing menu. The writing menu is full of choices that great authors make to make their writing their best. So we've been working on being just like good authors. We know that authors create a web of ideas and stick to one main point. They organize ideas in sentences, telling one story at a time. Those are lessons we had back in August, September, October. And now we've been talking about starting off with a bang. So how does an author start a story? And you've made some decisions about that in your draft. We've also been talking about interesting words. So that's why in your story, we're expecting to find some interesting words because we've been collecting lots of words over the last few weeks. When you're rereading and sharing your story with the class, we're going to be listening and you're going to be listening to see if the sentences that you read out loud are fluent, smooth, or are they choppy and missing some words? Because we can go in and fix that because we want to make sure that when we read it out loud, it sounds smooth like a story. And when we're done doing that, we will do our 5 checks. So your friends and you will be looking at your story, at your draft, checking for those uppercase letters at the beginning of sentences and proper names. We're going to be looking for that punctuation, spaces between the words. Did you use your best spelling? When you read it, does it make sense? So looking at the 5 checks, and then when we're all done looking at your draft and making some fixes, you will get to pick a title for your. What you're looking at right now is the writer's rubric. This is like a score sheet. You will be getting points for the choices you've made as a good writer. These are the lessons that we have covered since the beginning of the year, and we want to see if you can demonstrate these writing traits in your writing for your young author book. So you will get points every time you do one of these traits. Did you use a web? You get a point. In fact, I know everybody's going to get a point for that one because I know everybody did a web. before they drafted. I know we all made sure to stick to one main point. That's another place where you will get more points. Now, under organization, you can get 3 points. Did you use a scoop? Did you organize your ideas in your story just like you organized that scoop plan? You will get points if you're telling one story at a time. You will get points if you start off with a bang. If we can tell that you started off with either setting, characters, or the oh no problem, you can get a point. And at the end, you'll think of a title and get a point for that. Now, word choice is important because we've been keeping lists of interesting words and we want to see some of those words in your writing. So if you had forgotten to do that, when we are doing steps 4 and 5, that's a time that we can add those words in and get you your points. Sentence fluency means that your sentences are complete and they sound smooth and fluent when we read them aloud. So we can fix up any sentences that we need to. And then, of course, we'll go in and look at those 5 checks, the conventions or rules of writing. We'll look for those uppercase letters. We will look for the punctuation. We will look for spaces and neat letters. We'll be looking for your best spelling. We can even help with some spelling. And we'll reread to check if the story makes sense. Everyone will be getting a rubric for their story. The hot seat revised step is when your story is projected on the screen for all of your class to read. Now, it can be really exciting to share your story, but it can also make you a little nervous because it's the first time someone is seeing your writing. When you're in the hot seat, you are the reader and you get to call on your friends to give you help. So your friends are going to have the rubric in front of them. Your friends will have this rubric in front of them and they will look at your writing on the screen and then they will ask questions like, do you have any interesting words? And when we see your interesting words, we can give you those points. Or your friend might say, I can tell that you started off with a bang because you started off with explaining what the setting was. You get a point. They might even give suggestions like, oh, I don't see a period at the end of your sentence. And then we can go back in and they can make a suggestion and say, hey, I think you need to put a period after that word. Or they might say, hey, your name is in that story. You need to make sure that your name is uppercase. Or the name of the town that you added for your setting, that needs to be uppercase. So we'll be using this rubric to help each other get all of our points and get to that last step, which is publishing our young author books. I can't wait to work on editing and revising with you and for us all to have a turn in the hot seat.